A comeback. Critics, some are very outraged. A New Jersey school district, sending a letter to parents this week. The Passaic Public Schools now ordering face coverings for employees, students, and visitors. The district citing CDC numbers reporting high community levels of COVID in 10 of the state's counties there. The move sparking a lot of backlash. One critic, with 2 weeks to slow the spread, has turned into 2.75 years to flatten a generation. Another writing this. This is anti-science, anti-child, and just plain cruel. We have Fox Nation's David Webb. Kids just can't take it anymore.
Think about what it means to develop in school. Think about what it means to really learn to adjust to others, social development. What they've done in New Jersey is taken 2.5 weeks to slow the spread into almost 3 years to literally slow down a generation of kids. They're not learning. They're not advancing.
There is more. New Jersey's Camden City Schools and Philadelphia City Schools also bringing those mandates back into effect in January. New York City and New York State now recommending masks indoors. Jason Rantz, who is a Seattle radio show host, joining me now to talk a little bit about this. Jason, your thoughts on this as we're heading into this holiday season and looking at potential masks coming back in January?
It's ludicrous, it's not based in science, and it's not going to work. And it seems odd to me that no one seems to step back and say maybe the fact that for 2.5 years, some folks kept that mask on, kept people inside, not having any relationship with the outside world, might actually be bad for them, not just emotionally, but to their immune system. It is the flu season. Guess what? The flu happens during the flu season. COVID is not going to go anywhere. So we have to be a little bit smarter with how we approach these things moving forward. And the fact of the matter is, throwing into this fear-mongering of it's a triple-demic and we better mask up, it doesn't actually do anything. I would argue that it makes it worse because you're not introducing anything into your immune system the way that we used to. When it comes to kids in particular, we know that the risks of being in a mask and getting out, sort of away from the relationships that you used to have, being able to see the person that you're talking to, we know that that is way worse than what COVID will do to the average kid. And no one seems to have learned anything over the course of the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, it's interesting to see some school districts doing this, others not. Switching topics a little bit, recent polls show a majority of Americans and even a majority of Democrats are looking ahead to 2024, and they don't want President Biden to run again. Look at this poll. Among Democrats, and this is Dem-leaning independents as well, 78% want someone other than Biden. Now, many are expressing concerns about his age, about potential mental fitness, and we have seen a lot of gaffes, cringy moments throughout his presidency. The New York Post is out with a quote, "Year in Biden lies. How well do you know the falsehoods of our fibber-in-chief?" Very critical. Among Biden's biggest whoppers, his claim that he was arrested trying to see Nelson Mandela and sneaking into an all-girls dorm, his telltale of being a big rig driver, saying he was politically raised by Puerto Ricans, and this last one, this one really for the birds, the president saying that Delaware has the most chickens of any state, but no turkeys.
I mean, where do you start with that? It's really interesting because when you go over just the last couple of years, and this year in particular, I mean, there were gaffes and there were lies. There were political stories that he tells because he thinks it comes off as really folksy and down to earth and people will identify with. And you kind of give him a little bit of a pass, but at the same time, it plays into this idea that he's just really, really old and doesn't have a grasp of what's going on. Then, of course, you have the political lies. And I think that sometimes they get sort of written off as gaffes, including in some of the articles that I've read just over the course of last week, going over this year. Like when you tell us that the border is secure, that's not a gaffe. That is a flat out lie. That is gaslighting. There is political intent behind that. For me, though, just trying to reflect on all the gaffes, the "where's Jackie" moment I thought was so disturbing on so many levels and just frankly sad. And I do think that for a lot of people, that was the moment on the left where they said, maybe it's time to move on.
You remember how virulent those fact checkers were just a few years ago?
Where are they now?
Here's something else. This is, of course, President Biden welcoming Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine leader, to the White House yesterday before he went on to speak before Congress. But take a listen. He had this interaction with President Zelensky in the Oval Office yesterday.
By the way, we have a famous thing that occurs once a year. We pick the Man of the Year in Time Magazine. You are the Man of the Year in the United States of America.
I believe he was trying to pay a compliment, but just your thoughts on that back and forth.
It just seems every time he's in a position like this, he screws it up, where he gives reason for people to doubt his fitness, where it gives reason for people to wonder whether or not he's actually leading this country or if there are people behind him who are making these decisions and just putting him out there to do some of the frivolous back and forth. It's just sad. At some point, you do have to step back and say, this is a human being here who very clearly is not fit for office, and it just seems cruel to keep him in these positions.
Well, the voters are going to start thinking about that a lot in the new year, as then will be, the election season will kick off before we know it. Jason Rantz, thank you so much for joining us. I love your tie. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, Molly.
The Senate